Insomnia. The quiet hours stretch into the early morning, and I lie awake, turning over thoughts in my mind, feeling the weight of a restless body. The night is supposed to be a time of peace, a time to reset, but for those of us struggling with depression, it can feel like a slow descent into madness. Without sleep, the mind unravels, and what little strength we have left in the daylight seems to slip away into the darkness. It's no secret that depression and sleep are closely linked. When you're trapped in the depths of depression, sleep becomes an impossible task. Either you sleep too much and still feel tired, or you can't sleep at all, lost in the spiral of thoughts you can't control. The Stoics believed in mastering the mind, in controlling our emotions and our reactions to the world. But how do you maintain your mind when it feels like everything, even sleep itself, is slipping through your fingers? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." It's a comforting thought. But what happens when the mind itself becomes the battlefield? Depression and sleeplessness strip away that feeling of control. The Stoic principle of focusing on what is within our power seems distant when the very thing we need, sleep, won't come, and the mind begins to spin with worry and exhaustion. In moments of sleeplessness, the mind becomes louder. It exaggerates our fears, heightens our anxieties. The longer we stay awake, the more difficult it becomes to distinguish between rational thought and the distortions brought on by exhaustion. Foucault would argue that our thoughts are not entirely our own, that society and power structures influence how we think, even how we experience something as personal as mental health. In the dead of night, when sleep escapes us, it's easy to feel like we've lost control of both our thoughts and the structures that surround us. Resilience, though, is key. The Stoics tell us that while we may not control what happens outside of us, we do have some say over how we react internally. In those long hours of the night, it's not about forcing sleep to come, because the more we try, the further it slips away. Instead, it's about practicing acceptance. Like the Stoics, we must learn to accept what is outside our control, even when it feels unbearable. We must acknowledge the madness without letting it consume us. Wilfred Bion's concept of container-contained offers a way to understand this. He believed that our emotions and thoughts need to be processed, held in a safe container, otherwise they overflow and cause distress. In the still of the night, when sleep won't come, it's easy to feel like our emotions are spilling over. There's no container, no space to safely process them. But perhaps the act of acknowledging the thoughts, instead of resisting them, becomes the container. Perhaps, like the Stoics, we can practice observing our emotions without becoming lost in them. Then there's existentialism, which reminds us that meaning is not given to us. It's something we must create, even in our darkest moments. The sleepless nights, the hours spent wrestling with depressive thoughts, are perhaps not meaningless. They feel heavy, but in their weight we find the opportunity to confront ourselves, to ask the difficult questions about why we feel this way and what we can do with it. Sartre would tell us that even in the depths of suffering, we are free to define ourselves, free to make choices. Even if sleep escapes us, we are not entirely powerless. So how do we maintain our minds within the madness of depression and sleeplessness? The Stoics offer us discipline, reminding us to focus on what is within our power, our response, our thoughts, even if they feel fractured. Bion encourages us to create a container for our emotions, to let them exist without overwhelming us. And existentialism gives us freedom, the freedom to find meaning, even in suffering, even in the sleepless nights that stretch out longer than we can bear. Thank you for walking with me through these thoughts today. If you find yourself trapped in the cycle of depression and sleeplessness, know that you're not alone in this struggle. It's not easy to maintain your mind within the madness, but there are ways forward. Together, we can learn to navigate the sleepless nights, finding moments of calm in the chaos. and perhaps even glimpses of meaning in the madness. As the Stoics remind us, we may not control everything, but we can shape how we endure. And as the existentialists believe, even in our darkest hours, we are still free to define ourselves.